Hi, my name is Hadi Partovi. I'm the founder and CEO of Code.org, and I'm honored to be presenting today to the FedTalks audience. I want to talk about, as we start thinking about the hopefully the end of this pandemic situation and the future reopening of schools, how do we think about how education has changed over the last year, and what is the future going to hold? How, as we think about the digital divide that has been widened in this past year of pandemic, how do we think about narrowing that digital divide, improving opportunity for students, and then the very important role of computer science in not just closing opportunity gaps with the digital divide, but also bringing more creativity to education. Give me a second while I share my screen. And so I want to talk about computer science and how it holds the key to opportunity and creativity in our schools, and the role also that policy and government can play in helping students' outcomes. I want to start with a personal story. This is a story of my childhood. This is myself with my identical twin brother. We grew in Tehran, Iran, and a few years after this photo, our country was, embroiled in an Islamic revolution and a war with the neighboring country of Iraq. So my childhood was very different than most people's. I spent about 5 years where every single night the power would go out, there would be a loud alarm, and we'd all go to the basement and hold our ears for a bombing raid and hope that our home wouldn't get hit. So it was a pretty difficult time to grow up. But my life really changed one day when my parents brought home a magical gift. They brought home a Commodore 64 personal computer, but this was a magical gift because it didn't have any games or apps or software. The magical gift was a book, an introduction to basic computer programming. And so there in the middle of an Islamic revolution and war, thanks to a father who was a physicist and a mother who was a computer scientist, I taught myself computer science and computer programming and learned to code really well. And at a time of, the really difficult surroundings around me, I was able to realize my dreams by what I could create using software. And this really changed the arc of my life. When I came to the United States as an Iranian immigrant, I basically have been living the American dream and tapping into the modern world of opportunity in the digital century. I went to university and studied computer science. I had started my own startup by the time I was 26 years old, and I'm well on my way in terms of surpassing any of my peers, not only in terms of financial fortunes, but really the much more important fortune of being able to start a global nonprofit. But as we think about it, the world of opportunity has been shifting and changing. It's been changing due to globalization and automation, but this pandemic has even accelerated that shift. If you think about technology's impact on our workforce, if you think of people who are in jobs today, those jobs are gradually getting replaced by computing and software, robots, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And that shift is accelerating with things like the pandemic, making it harder for people during this time to be working in close quarters at a time when computers can work in close quarters without any problems. Projections say that over half of all of today's work is going to be automated by the middle of the century. And what are we doing to prepare students and to prepare the future adults for that time? Now, because my hat says code on it and I represent code.org, people assume that computer science is only about coding and jobs. And in fact, the work in computer science is the largest sector of new jobs. It's the fastest growing and the highest paying sector. And so there's a great story to be told about why we should teach computer science just for the kids who want to become coders and get those jobs. But that's not the full picture. I want to talk about why it's important to teach computer science to every student in every school for a different reason. Because computer science makes school better no matter what a student wants to get into as their career. And it does this in 3 different ways. First of all, computer science provides students better preparation for life. If I think about what I studied when I was in school or what everybody here studied in school, we all learn about how the digestive system works, or how electricity lights a light bulb, or how basic geometry works. And we learn these things not because we want to become future surgeons or electricians or mathematicians. They're part of the basic fundamental understanding of how the world works and things we need to know to be participants in civic society. In the 21st century, it's equally important or even more important for students to know what an algorithm is or how the internet works. These are equally impactful in our daily lives, and not knowing about these things, not understanding the basics, are holding back our future citizens from basically participating in the 21st century. Now, besides life preparation, computer science helps schools prepare students for college and career across all education. And this is new research over the last few years that show that students who study computer science outperform. They outperform their peers in reading and writing and math and science exams as early as elementary school. So state standardized tests show that the third graders and fifth graders who studied any degree of computer science using the code.org platform are outperforming already. They outperform problem solving and executive functioning skills. By high school, they do better in math courses. So the same skill level students equal at math. The ones who study computer science excel at math. And lastly, high school students who study computer science are 17% more likely to enroll in four-year colleges. 17%. And that's not because the computer science course helps them get into college. And even in college, computer science students, those who study computer science, outperform students of all other STEM fields when it comes to problem solving. And finally, after graduation, students who study computer science also make higher wages. And now get this, people assume therefore that, all right, so this means the math nerds are doing better. The most interesting research that breaks all stereotypes is that language skills are 8 times more likely to predict a student's success in computer science than math skills, which means that English teachers are going to be more likely to be good at computer science than math teachers. It means bilingual Latino students are going to have a leg up when it comes to learning computer programming. This is a stereotype that we've held on to for decades, that computer science is about math, and that's actually just proven to be not true. Which gets me to my third point, which is that computer science is more engaging and fun for students and teachers. This is because of its creativity. It's because as early as elementary school, students can create beautiful art using code, and at the same time, they're learning math concepts like the angles. By middle school, students can, instead of playing games, create their own games, and along the way, learn about physical concepts like gravity. And by high school, they can create apps to then think about how to expand their creativity into changing their daily lives. And speaking about creativity in schools, there are so many amazing stories of what students have done creatively with computer science. Like the story of Dowdy Manigat, a 10th grader from Miami, who thought of making an app for female abuse victims disguised as a menstrual cycle tracker, so they could secretly call for security or for help without placing a phone call. Or Sophie Saujani in Seattle, who decided to make a local app right in March at the beginning of the pandemic, and her app was to help local restaurants basically share their open or closed status. Or these students led by Hannah Burr in Massachusetts, who made an app to help their high school classmates self-diagnose their mental health. Or this app by Spencer Applegate, living in Glasgow, Kentucky, one of the poorest communities in the country, where 1 out of 6 of his classmates are homeless, and his teacher, Larry Correll, challenged him to recreate Tetris, a $1 billion video game, and he did it at only 100 lines of code. All of us need to think about how school can bring out creativity in students. And when students are creating with computers, they're not just creating code, they're creating art, they're creating user interfaces, they're creating new businesses, they're thinking about entrepreneurship. These are the skills that we need every student to learn to think about a digital world of the 21st century, where rote work, manual labor is being automated, memorization is no longer necessary, and what's important isn't how much information you can store in your head, but what you can do with that information. Because of its creativity, students now rank computer science their favorite subject, behind only dance, music, and art. In the words of a teacher, I decided to try code.org in my 8th grade class, and I've never ever seen my students so engaged and excited about learning. This is how we should have every teacher talk about every student. And the problem is that our schools today are something that aren't engaging students at the level they should be, because we're teaching too much of the curriculum of the past, too much of the courses that were designed hundreds of years ago that don't envision what we need in today's world. Now, the challenge that I've been trying to solve is that most schools don't teach computer science. In the United States, after 8 years of this work, we've grown from 10% of schools teaching computer science to 47%. The majority still don't offer it. Also, if you look at who has access to computer science, the picture is basically the opposite of what it should be. The lower income schools are less likely to teach computer science, which means the students who have the greatest need for access to opportunity, the ones who need to have a ladder that helps them get to a better level of life, are also not given one. Now, this is a problem that we can change, and it's a problem that we are steadily changing, and all of these numbers are better than they used to be. In fact, on code.org, there's now 15 million students with accounts, and almost half of them are young women. Half of them come from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, and almost half are students who are too poor to buy their own lunch, and yet they're learning computer science. And these students have collectively created over 100 million projects, showing the importance of creativity in education. Now, this isn't just the work of code.org, this is part of a global movement. And what's happened in the last 7 years in the United States, every state has established some sort of policy to support the expansion of K through 12 computer science. Over 250 million in federal and state funding has been allocated for this field, and over 100,000 new teachers have been prepared to become computer science teachers. And globally, over 50 countries have announced plans. Over 1 million teachers have introduced computer science to their classroom. And the Hour of Code, this fun 1-hour idea we came up with to basically engage students in classrooms with coding and computer science, has surpassed 1 billion engagements. This is thanks to a global movement powered by teachers. It started with individuals like Juan Lonzano in South Seattle, just near where I live, who began teaching computer science in his own classroom and then recruited his whole school to participate. Soon, the entire district had established a computer science plan, and as districts around the country began teaching computer science, states started taking notice, and every state has changed policies. And this, as an American-led movement, has now impacted 50 different countries who are rolling out computer science plans. It's an incredible story of how teachers and educators can build a movement to create opportunity for students. And still, most schools don't teach computer science. Now, 2020 is going to be a big year in so many different ways because of the pandemic and the digital divide. And one of the things that we need to think about is how 2020 is going to change education. And what are we going to do for these students that, because of this pandemic, are seeing a widening digital divide, a widening opportunity gap? How do we give the neediest students the opportunity to get further in life? And because of this, computer science itself is at an inflection point, because computer science holds the key to solve many of the problems we think about. We need to reframe what this is about. Computer science isn't just about coding, it's about creativity and collaboration and opportunity. It's also not just about tech jobs. Computer science has become a foundational part of basic education that every child will need for success in the 21st century. And this brings me to perhaps the most important point in my talk. We need to reframe computer science to show that this is a field that is about solving global problems. At a time of a global pandemic, computer science holds the key to drug discovery and personalized medicine. At a time when democracy is suffering from a pandemic of misinformation, computer science holds the key to identifying fake news or moderating dialogue on social networks. At a time when racism and xenophobia are coinciding with a global economic recession, computer science holds the key to opportunity, and teaching computer science equitably can build bridges across populations. When I learned computer science, the class was around calculating numbers like the Fibonacci sequence or about calculating factorials. When Mark Zuckerberg learned computer science, the latest thing was about sharing information on the internet. We need to shift computer science class to be about curing diseases, cleaning oceans, aiming for gender and race equality, and addressing global poverty. These are some of the largest problems of our time, and our youngest generation are going to be the ones solving these problems, and they are going to be solving these problems using technology so long as we democratize access and the learning of how that technology works and how to create the technology themselves. This brings me to my final point, which is that computer science is about community. When I started code.org, the community of computer science educators was thousands of teachers who were very passionate, and it was a small, tight-knit community. And this community has now grown to over 1 million teachers. And it's still a movement that is still early, that has 10x or 100x growth in it. This movement is around what individual educators, teachers, parents, policymakers, and champions have pushed behind about the opportunity and the idea that every student should have access to computer science. This brings me to back to my personal story. When I came to the United States as an immigrant, there was a lot of things that I didn't have going my way. My family had no money. I was learning a new language. I was learning a new culture, and just trying to make friends was difficult. I didn't even know how to dress up for my first day of school. But what I had going for me was a very strong understanding of computer science and coding, and that helped me surpass all of my peers in terms of my later life, in terms of where it took my career. If you think about the kids all around the country and all around the world who need opportunity the most, what is the course and what is the background that our schools can provide them to help them get ahead in life? And the answer is every student should have access, at least the opportunity to learn computer science as part of school. And this is change that is happening. My story is linked to the story of Araceli Casillas in South Seattle. She's also an immigrant, and she's the first student from her family to go to university. She studied computer science thanks to Code.org in high school, and now she's at the University of Washington, one of the top computer science programs in the country. Or Spencer Applegate, who we spoke about, from the low-income neighborhood where so many of his fellow classmates are homeless, is now studying computer science in college thanks to the course that he took in high school. Or this young lady, Katie Clemens from Missouri, who wrote an app to help her friends self-diagnose their mental illness, and is now pursuing her interests in technology. Stories like this are happening all around the country and all around the world, as far away as in Johannesburg, South Africa, where young women are pushing coding in schools, or in Popayan, a rural town in Colombia, where teachers are together rolling out a program to teach computer science. And this work is powered by teachers such as Flo Vaughn. This is a teacher in Oakland who herself didn't know computer science, but she learned it. Not only is she teaching it in class, she's helping the other teachers learn. The work of these educators is collectively changing the face of who is studying computer science, a field that has historically been dominated by white and Asian men, but is now reflecting the diversity of everybody who are the students in this country and even on this planet. I want to close by thanking the over 1.5 million teachers who have helped introduce computer science in classrooms. This movement that I'm talking about is powered by teachers. These teachers are doing one of the most important jobs in our world. They're changing the face of computer science, and they're also changing the face of opportunity for our future generations. My hat's off to the teachers, and thank you to all of you. Please help spread this movement to teach computer science to every student in every school.